This is Hunxho. He has been on a run for a while, and the reason is his incredible sound. One thing that stands out in his sound is the pain and R&B influenced style of production. Those beats combined with his unique voice are simply unique. In this video I'm going in depth behind the techniques used in those amazing beats like Your Friends,
What you doing? Where you been? Where you going? You with your friends?
or By Tomorrow.
Listen, I ain't crazy and I ain't tripping.
And uncover the production secrets by breaking down a loop in his signature style. And now, without wasting any more time, let's get into the secrets of Hunxho's amazing production. If you listen closely to the production, you will notice that the core element that stands out are most of the time beautiful analog synth chord progressions. And since I don't have a real synth, I've started this melody by opening up Analog Lab. I think that is one of the best VSTs to create that sound. The preset that I've used is the didgeridoo, and the chord progression that I've laid down is one of the most simple chord progressions, but it just works perfectly with that sound. The way that you build those chords is pretty simple. For example, if you look right at this chord, except for duplicating the root note and bringing it down an octave, I've also just took the third note of the chord and brought it down an octave as well. If you watch closely, you can see that all these chords are just the normal chords based on 3 notes. So to make your chord shape more interesting, all you gotta do is invert your chords in a way that it sounds good for you. There's no right or wrong for it, you just have to experiment a little bit and just play around with the shape of the chords. A good point to start, as I said, is lay down the basic chord, 3 notes, copy some of the notes, bring them up an octave, bring them down an octave, and see what it sounds like for you. For the effects, I've added a reverb and a chorus. So we also have another easy component. Why is it easy? Because we already got our chord progression down and now we just want to layer it. The melodies are usually not as complex because you want to leave a lot of space for him to perform with his voice and let the voice be the main instrument and the main melodic component. But to build the different sections throughout the beat, you want to have a bunch of layers and different sounds that you can take out and put in so that the average listener can notice a clear difference in what is going on. So to layer our chord progression, I went into Analog Lab again and picked one of my favorite presets, which is the double softness preset. Just copy and paste the chords, put them up an octave because it sounds way better with that preset. And for the effects, I've added a reverb and an EQ. Next, we hop into one of the easiest parts before it gets a little bit more complex. To give your progression that low end, you want to add a synth bass. Therefore, I went into Omnisphere and added one of these R&B basses. As I mentioned earlier, this Hunxho style is very influenced by choosing R&B sounds, and that's why I went with a preset like that. And as you probably know, this is an easy component because we are just following the root notes. So let's don't waste any more time with the bass and hop into the more complex part. So the next thing that I've added is one of these ear candy ARP sounds. Therefore, I opened up Analog Lab again and choose the introspective preset. If you want to know the complete thought process behind that, make sure to stick around till the end of the video where I will explain you everything you need to know. So for the effects, I've added a reverb, a delay, and an EQ. So before we hop into the most important part, which are obviously the vocals, since I've mentioned By Tomorrow and Your Friends as the example of the vibe that I want to show you, let's put a check mark behind the ear candy sounds because we still got a bunch of them. For those who've been around on the channel a little bit longer, you already know how much I love that sound. And by the way, if you're new, make sure to hit the subscribe button real quick so you don't miss any new gems. The next sound that I've added is one of my favorite bell presets from Omnisphere. It's just a super soft bell and stays right in the background, which makes it perfectly for those ambient productions, since you can add an ear candy sound that doesn't take too much space, but you still have something cool that adds more character to your melody. Because if you listen closely to all those Hunxho beats, there's not much going on in terms of counter melodies and crazy top lines, but usually those sounds have a lot of layers, ear candies, different sections that makes those loops very interesting and keeps the listener to stick around. That's the reason why the pattern that I've laid down is super simple, but the bell just sits at the right pockets to add that extra touch. So before we go into the vocals, we've got two more ear candy sounds. So first of all, we got this perk loop. That is one more of those components that doesn't stand out on its own, but also adds more character. So, and since there's nothing really to explain besides, if you want to look for a perk loop on a website like Splice, for example, I'm not sponsored by them, but it's one of the biggest sound libraries you can use. Just look for something that goes right with what you already have. One part of it is how the perk loop in general sounds, like the sound design of the perk loop. And the second part, of course, is the bounce of it. And the last ear candy sound is also from Splice, but to be honest, it's not that hard to make it on your own as well, since it's just a reverse pad sound. So if you would open a VST like Analog Lab or Omnisphere and then reverse it at the end, you would get something similar. So if you don't have a Splice subscription and want to do it on your own with a VST, this is how you do it. Let's hop into the vocals. And you need to believe me, I'm not sponsored by Splice, but I went on Splice again to look for good vocals. As I mentioned in my previous videos, you can also use Arcade, especially the hook section works very well. But there are also different ways to make truly unique vocals. If you want me to show you how you can do it in one of my next videos, write it down in the comments so I know that you want to see it. So for vocals, two things are super important. First of all, of course, do they fit to your chord progression? Because sometimes you can find a good vocal, but the rhythm, the flow doesn't really match your chords. That's why some producers first pick a good vocal and then build the chords around the vocal. So well, since we already had the chords, of course we want to look for something that matches what we have. And therefore you can do the exact same that I just showed you about the perk loop. Let the chord progression play, click on some vocal samples and see if you can already imagine that it fits your chord progression. So we pretty much have two main vocals. The first layer and then the second layer, which is my favorite to be honest. As you can see, I chopped them up a little bit and just picked the parts that I like. That's kind of the first stage on how you can use vocals that everybody has access to in a more unique style, because everybody's ears a little bit different. And if you chop them up, reposition something, just use the parts that you feel like fit what you got and structure two vocal samples together, you get something a little bit more unique. So let's take a quick listen before we go into the very details. And with vocals, you still can have a creative process to make it more unique without overcomplicating everything and do like crazy stuff all over the place. And here are two easy options to do so. So the first one is to take some of the parts and pitch them up an octave, pitch them down an octave, which adds a truly unique character and makes it sound super good. That is also something that you can hear in a lot of those Hunxho melodies. And the second technique is the one that I've used for this melody, which is to reverse some of the components. I've went in and resampled some of the elements from our two vocal components, rendered them out, and ended up with two extra layers that added more character as well. Before we listen what the final result sounds like, I want to let you know that I've just released a new loop kit, which also includes the loop that we just broke down, 20 placement ready loops in the style of Hunxho, Rilo, Lil Durk, Young and Ace, even Young Boy. If that's interesting for you, check out the first link in the video description. And if you use code Hunxho, you also get 20% off, which also applies to all my other kits in the store. For a limited time only, so you better be quick. And now let's listen what the final loop sounds like. This is everything you need to make amazing Hunxho loops. And if you watch the video closely, you know that I owe you an explanation on how to make these beautiful arps. If you want to know how to make them, I broke down the technique in my last video. So if you want to know how to make beautiful love beats for Young and Ace and how to make these amazing arps, better check out this video.